This video hopes to explain how to make your tracking system a little bit more flexible and generally make all the staff in school more comfortable with using it. Now here's a typical tracking system which consists of columns which have target grades, one for each student, and then each student will then have a test grade recorded against their name, and finally some sort of comparison will be made. Let's have a look at those target grades for a minute. If we unpack what's happening in the target grades, we see that there's a reasonably complicated system going on. First of all, students will have sat either a cognitive test earlier on in the year, or alternatively it will be taking information about their prior attainment in previous exams. This information will be put into a computer that will then compare their performance against previous students' performance and then make predictions about how likely they are to therefore achieve certain grades based on what historically students of similar ability have done. Now, seeing what the probabilities of getting these grades are, the teacher should use their professional judgment to pick a grade that will be aspirational for that student, will stretch them a bit, but will be attainable. Finally, that is the target grade that they've selected that the student should be judged against. Now, the test grade is then input compared against the target grade, and we come up with the comparison, or what we call a residual. This is a number that tells you how far ahead or behind of their target grade they are, and these numbers work as follows. If they've got a number of -2, then that means they are 2 grades below where they should be at this point in the year, which might be a concern. If they're 1 grade below where they should be, then they're just behind where they need to be. If they are exactly on their target grade, then we could say they're on track, and if they're just ahead of their target grade, we could say they're exceeding their current expected performance. Now, the trouble is, the ordinary student is not necessarily up to speed on all the key skills in the autumn term. So what we find is they may perfectly reasonably and acceptably get a C in their first assessment, that's in the autumn term. By spring they've improved this to a B, and by summer they've got to a standard of an A. Now that's fine, but it shows that they are improving during the year for perfectly good reasons. But if we put those into our tracking system, that means in the autumn term they'll come up as a concern because they're 2 grades below their final target grade. Now this concern is for many people. The form tutor will be concerned, the parent, the student, the head of year, the senior management. They won't necessarily know that this is acceptable progress through the year, so when they see a concern, alarm bells will ring, and they will be getting in touch with the head of department and the teacher to ask what's going on. So the solution to this is to introduce interim targets that are automatically calculated against the final target. So if you have a final target of an A, then in autumn, the head of department can say that they are happy for students to be getting 2 grades behind, or a C. In spring, they're happy to get 1 grade behind, or in this case a B. And in summer, they want them to be getting their final target. So when you then use the other information and find out what they actually got, you then find out that actually if the student's getting a B in autumn, that's better than would be expected at this point, so they're exceeding current expected performance. In spring, we'd hope they'd be improving, but this student has gone down to a C, so they're just behind where they should be now. But by summer, they've caught up and they're now on track for their final grade. Now, the rules for interim targets are they must be controlled by heads of department. It will be different in every single subject depending on how they move through their course. Some departments will wish to have the same target all the way through the year, and some departments will show that they are examining the same skills throughout the year and expect to see significant improvement, and that's fine. It must be flexible. As these departments set their tests, then they need to have the flexibility to adjust these interim targets as necessary, and they need to explain to the students how they're being judged. Now, the benefits of this system are that the parents and the pastoral team no longer need to know if a certain grade is acceptable or not. They don't need to see a concern and go back to a head of department or teacher and say, but is this really a concern or is it just a computer glitch? Now, we can also see that's going to reduce the stress for the subject teacher and for the student and for the parent, and it's much more useful feedback for the student. So when you're creating your tracking system, I would thoroughly recommend that you introduce these interim targets, and in a future video I'll show you how you could do that using Capita Sims Assessment Manager.